while you're doing this,
Yeah.
are you getting paid or do you have to work a side job?
So you start getting paid after medical school. So you get paid in residency. Yeah, my husband and I were in residency in New York City. We each made $30,000 a year.
In New York City. That's fantastic.
So you weren't living in New York City then.
Yeah, no.
And you have that doctor, you have that sheepskin on the wall, and everybody's thinking, hey, you're a doctor, you're living large. This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast. Our bodies have an expiration date, and from the moment we are born, the clock starts ticking. Events happen in our lives that leave us with everlasting marks that we would soon like to forget. Whether it's our vanity, hubris, self-esteem, or quality of life, we're conscious of how we're presented to the world, always wishing to show the best of us, the inner beauty projected outward. It is often the most beautiful people who have the most scars. What if there was a magic wand that could erase reminders of the scars that damage our soul? With the flick of a wrist, all our pain is taken away and replaced with peace and fond memories. I'm Kevin Donaldson here with Mike Failace, and on this episode of the Suffering Podcast, we sit down with Dr. Stephanie Cohen to discuss the suffering of a plastic surgeon. Dr. Cohen helps repair the lasting scars and help breathe new life into people, maybe leaving some of the old scars behind. Dr. Cohen, thank you so much for joining us.
Sure, my pleasure.
Doc, before we get into it, could you do anything with this?
I knew that was coming at least once.
I know. I'm sick of looking at this every week.
You know, my primary subject is my husband, and he always asks, what can you do with my nose? And I say, absolutely nothing. There's nothing I could do to help it. It's got the biggest nostrils you ever see.
He picks his nose like this.
See, on the other hand, I can't get my finger up my nostril. Could you give me bigger nostrils then?
You lucky I can't hit your elbow to go right up and stab your brain.
Kevin, you're beautiful.
Before
That's the first time he's ever heard that, but go ahead.
Before we get into anything, we have to throw a shout out to Toyota of Hackensack. We buy our cars from Toyota of Hackensack. That's because we don't trust anybody, and we do trust them. So go to toyotaofhackensack.com, let them find you a car. And when you're driving home in your new Toyota, go to Frontline Cigars. There's nothing better to celebrate than a Frontline Cigars. It's a Chicago-based cigar company run by two police officers, a 15 and a 30-year veteran. They really do their best in order to help the cigar community gel together and be more family-oriented. So go buy a Toyota and enjoy them with your new Frontline cigar.
If you get plastic surgery, could you have a cigar right after to celebrate your
That would
plastic
be the
surgery?
worst thing you could do.
Didn't you ever see that Seinfeld episode where Kramer was smoking all those cigars? His face looked like a catcher's mitt?
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about the Junior Mint episode.
Oh, that's another good one. That's another good surgery one. Dr. Cohen, we take questions from our audience every week. This week's social media question comes from Kelly, and it says, what advice would you give your younger self? So I'm going to pass this one off to you since you're our guest.
Oh, boy, it started off with a really hard one.
We don't make it easy here.
The little Dr. Cohen walks into this room, and what would you tell her?
Boy, that's hard. It's funny. When I had this really kind of advanced feeling when I was a kid that I was going to do something like this. And I did. So there's
I was going to say, was it a lifelong dream of yours?
I think it wasn't 100% a dream. It was my dream of my father for me to be a plastic surgeon, or for me to be a surgean, really.
To be a doctor,
to
just
be a
in
doctor,
general.
Mostly a surgeon. No, doctor wasn't good enough. It had to be a surgeon. My father was a gynecologist, and there was no getting out of being a surgeon. I was like, he would like whisper it to me in my crib. So it was going to be that, or it was going to be nothing. And I was actually an artist, and I was going to go to art school instead of going to medical school.
Well, you just chose a different art.
Well, exactly. So I had a high school art teacher who said, your dad really wants you to go to medical school and you're good at science. And so, you could be an artistic doctor. And
Your father wasn't a gynecological surgeon,
he
was he?
Yeah.
He was a surgeon?
Yeah.
He did.
Really?
He did vagoplasty.
Vagoplasty.
No, that's what a plastic surgeon does.
Vaginectomy.
That's what a plastic surgeon does.
If it says plasty at the end, that's what a plastic surgeon
So if you
does.
were to go back and talk to that young lady,
Yeah, gosh, what would I tell her?
What would you tell her?
I would tell her, keep plugging away because it's all going to be okay in the end.
Because when you're younger, you can't
gonna
see
work out.
the long run. You can't see the picture at the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
You have to go through all that, the hard work and everything before you get
Yeah,
there.
there's a lot of hard work to get to plastic surgery. It's a long
I'm sure.
time. Again, I always had this sort of weird feeling that I was going to get there. and that I knew how to get there. And I was going to do it different than other people. Because, when I went into surgery, there weren't a lot of women in surgery. There were very, very few. So,
That's a whole other subject, female surgeon.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Oh, yeah, I never aspired to be on a podcast. I know that. And if I would have talked to my younger self, I would have said no to that. But, I just keep pushing ahead,
Yet you keep coming back.
Yeah, no kidding.
There weren't a lot of people telling me what to do or how to do it, So just I always had this idea that I was going to get there, and so myself now would say, you did it, you got there. It's actually almost harder when you get there and you don't you're like, okay, now what do I do? Once I got there.
Was there like a feeling of accomplishment when you got there?
Yeah, it's such a long process.
You finally just said.
It's kind of weird, because you're like, what do I do with my life now that I'm not striving to get there anymore? You have to keep working on yourself. Then that's harder.
Yeah. My whole thing is just keep pushing on. Set yourself a goal.
Is that what you would tell your younger self, other than get minoxidil real early?
I mean, there was a lot of things I would tell a kid, but we are in mixed company right now, but I can't say anything.
Don't sleep with this girl, and don't go near this one. And
stop touching that.
You're gonna go blind.
Get hairy palms.
Yeah.
No, just set your goals. Find out something that you want early in life. A lot of people, they go to college with no purpose in life.
Yeah. Oh, that's.
They're just going to go to college and say, "Yeah, I'm going to go to college."
Yeah.
For what?
Exactly.
For what?
I'm going to go. And you wind up taking up space. And like I said, I went to college for a year, and I realized that wasn't for me. And I said, I have a, at that point when I'm 18 years old, I set a goal in my life. I always said I want to be a professional football player. Then I learned I was too slow, too short, and too white. And then I always wanted to be a cop. So I set my goal on becoming a cop.
Well, there you got to adjust what your goal is sometimes.
Yeah,
exactly. Well, that's the adjustment part.
Sometimes you hit those crossroads.
Yeah.
Well, you had to learn. So one of the prerequisites for college, and probably the reason why you had to leave, is one of the prerequisites you had to read and know how to read above a third grade level.
Yeah, see, I had a fourth grade level, so I was accepted into college.
You were accepted. Okay. Yeah. For me,
Here's a guy who can't get through an intro without stumbling all over himself, and he's telling me I got to read. But
there's a reason why I read the intros, because there's a lot of big words in there.
Yeah, and you got no glasses on now.
Yeah, I know. But if I were to look at that little kid, and I would, number one, do my best to try to give him some guidance that lacked in my life. Try to give him some direction. Try to tell him that, life's going to kick you in the ass several different times, but there is a way out, and it does get better. Tomorrow is a new day. The sun always rises. All those little pearls of wisdom that you tell yourself every day when you get a little down, you get a little low. And, like everybody else, I'd say, okay, stay away from this person and don't go here and don't go here. That if you had that time machine. But ultimately, I'd tell him, in every walk of life and every mistake that you're going to make, and you're going to make a lot of them, you are absolutely right where you're supposed to be at all times. Don't ever think you're in the wrong place or the wrong time. Don't ever think you have bad luck. That's where you're meant to be, because it's going to make you who you are eventually. And listen, hopefully in 20 years I get there.
Well, the other thing is, don't be afraid to fail.
You
learn more off of your failures than you do off of your successes.
Yeah, and nobody's going in a straight line.
If you keep succeeding in everything, you're really not going to learn much. You got to fail in order to pick yourself up and come back as a stronger person.
Kelly, thank you so much for sending that in. I really do like that question. I like that question a lot, because
we could go on all night about that.
Yeah, but we are sitting here. Unfortunately, we are sitting here with royalty. We are sitting here with the breast whisperer.
I was going to say breast royalty.
The breast of the breast. Dr. Cohen, your specialty is breast reconstruction.
Yes.
And I have read your biography. I have read a little bit about you.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Well, where I trained and that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
It's the hardest question we could ask people.
I
Tell
know,
us about
really,
yourself.
about myself.
I could tell
talk
you
for
the
5
anatomy
seconds
of anything
minutes.
on your body, and you could spell it out textbook. But
well, I was a nerdy little kid, and then I went to medical school. And
Where were you born and raised? You were born and raised in this area?
I was born in Brooklyn, actually, and my dad was a doctor. He's a gynecologist, and his dream was always for me to be a doctor,
which is
I didn't have a
amazing too.
choice.
Coming from a police officer's background, it's the one thing I didn't want my son to do. It's just like playing football till I was 22. I never wanted my son to play football. Well, guess where he gravitated to? That's all he wants to do.
Well, it was the opposite in my family. He really literally whispered it to me in my cradle. It was like it was an inevitability. It was going to happen. But I did. I went to medical school, loved it. I knew when I went to medical school that I was going to do surgery, and if it wasn't surgery, I was going to leave medical school and be like an architect or something, because I wanted to do something. I knew it was going to be something physical with my hands. I was an artist when I was a kid.
Well, aren't you really like an architect now, though?
Yeah,
You do build.
Yeah.
My
Building
favorite
stink,
architect, by the
building
way,
things.
is Art Vandelay. And for those out there who can pick that one out, you watch way
Good
too
for
much TV. Yeah.
Went right over my head, so I don't watch too much.
That's
TV.
not hard to do. You're kind of short.
If it wasn't on a rerun of Friends, I don't know who.
Well, it was
Art
Seinfeld.
Vandelay-
Seinfeld was George's alter ego. It was Art Vandelay, the architect. And he was also a latex salesman, but that's a different story.
But we were saying before, I didn't, go into medical school and say, gee, I want to be a boob doctor.
But there was no,
didn't happen
it
that
wasn't
way.
like a clear-cut direction. It's like, I want to be a surgeon.
Yeah, back when I did my training, in order to be a plastic surgeon, you had to go through general surgery first. So we all trained in general surgery, and that's like the boot camp. It's like the army of medical training. So
And you practice on cadavers when they're going through the training?
no, you do that in your first year of medical school. That's sort of like the rite of passage, to get you through that section, and then have you be acquainted with suffering and death and that kind of
Sort of
thing
gets
on
to see if you
topic.
got the stomach for it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And mostly I didn't like the smell of that.
The smell of it's pretty. When you get into the bowel tract, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad.
The smell of death is terrible.
It's bad.
Yeah.
But when you go into surgery, you learn mostly your anatomy from actually seeing it in the operating room, and that's much different than when you see somebody after they're gone. So that's a whole different experience.
You get to see people wake up after surgery.
You do. That's always
Not working
good
on these dead
ending.
people.
Yeah.
But you train through seeing it, live and in action, and then doing it a little bit and getting through that.
Well,
But-
had you performed before you chose your field? Had you performed? I don't know the path of a surgeon.
Yeah.
Okay, that's basically the question I'm asking you. Is did you have to perform different types of surgeries or assist or do things
You
like
know what's
that?
really interesting about surgical training? No one ever tests whether you can use all 10 fingers. They really don't.
Are you good
it's
with a
surprising.
scalpel?
No, seriously, it's surprising to a lot of people that they don't take you to a Chinese restaurant and see if you can use chopsticks. Nobody ever does that. There's no test for that.
Finger dexterity test.
There's nothing of that. They bring you to the operating room, and eventually, you'll see it. But when you do have to apply for your surgical residency, so medical students do 4 years of med school after college, and then we all go to residency. Residency can be a surgical residency or it can be a medical residency, but surgeons all go through surgery training. And when I did it, it's a little different now, but when I did it, we did 5 years of general surgery training first, and then we all did our plastic surgery fellowship, which is usually another 2 or 3 years after that. So
You're 11 years into it.
Yeah, 11 years.
See how I did the math on the fly like that?
That was pretty
was
good.
good.
That was
That was
pretty
good,
good,
right?
Yeah.
I counted.
But
That's not easy to do.
No,
I
while
got
you're,
flip flops on so I could use my toes.
while you're doing this,
Yeah.
are you getting paid or do you have to work a side job?
So you start getting paid after medical school. So you get paid in residency. Yeah, my husband and I were in residency in New York City. We each made $30,000 a year.
In New York City. That's
So you
fantastic.
weren't living in New York City then.
No.
And you have that doctor,
Yeah.
you have that sheepskin on the wall, and everybody's thinking, hey, you're a doctor,
yeah.
you're living large. Well, no.
Living in an
no.
apartment
Yeah.
building saying,
Well,
hey, the
the
two
only-
people next to us are
The only
doctors.
saving grace is I was never out of the hospital. So, you ate there, you slept there, you lived there. So I didn't need to spend a lot of money outside the hospital.
You got real good at sleeping on a hospital gurney, I guess.
So
But
your husband's a doctor also?
He's a child psychiatrist.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and so he had a much easier residency time than I did.
Oh, don't say that at home.
Oh, I say it all the time.
you
You'll
know,
be sleeping on the
he knows
couch.
it.
Or he'll be sleeping on the couch.
but you get to look at boobs all day. He has to deal with childhood trauma.
Whose job is harder?
I'm
right?
going to tell you right now, I'd rather have your job.
I think her husband rather have her job too.
I told you when we were in our residency training, and he was a child psychiatrist. Every time we went to a party, everybody always wanted to talk to him about their kid. They wanted to ask questions. They wanted to know what to do. And the minute I became a plastic surgeon, Nobody wanted to talk to him anymore. Everybody wanted to talk to me.
Well, did you ever see her husband though? He's like this.
He's big. Oh, he's got the big cans.
Yeah. You should practice on him first.
I just used one of the common vernacular terms that men use for women's breasts. It's like, hey, it's a nice set of cans. It's boobs. Let's get them all out. Like, it's that first day of sex ed. That sex ed. You got to get them all out of there. And I'm sure being around an operating room.
Yeah, we go through everything.
You go through everything.
I think, actually, in my practice a lot, when I'm talking to my awake patients, I use the term boob all the time. And I think it kind of puts people at ease.
It disarms people. And
completely does.
I'll tell you why, because I've been vasectomized, okay? After my second kid, I was done. And my doctor, you're real nervous. I did it as an outpatient, so I was awake during it. And my doctor says, okay, drop your drawers and hang trowel. That's exactly what he said to me, and I go, "What did you just say? What did you just say to me?"
But vasectomized isn't a word.
No, I just made it up.
That's another. Put that in a podcast dictionary.
It's the Merriam-Donaldson dictionary.
Yeah.
But
you're
100% correct, because what it did was disarm me. I was so nervous. My heart rate was up to about 140.
Yeah.
Just sitting there calm, but he brought me down.
Yeah, and the last thing people want to hear is you throwing out medical terms.
Yeah.
Nobody cares.
It wasn't antiseptic. It was personal. The guy's holding my boys. I mean, I gotta. What? It doesn't get any more personal than that. And you deal with the same thing.
Yeah.
You're really giving people back their lives a lot of the times, because everybody thinks breast augmentation is, you're going to make these
getting breast implants.
Somebody who's smaller just wants to give. No. It's a lot more than that.
Right. Well, you have both different realms, right? You have the cosmetic aspect of it, which can make people very happy and can change somebody's life really quickly,
Makes guys happy, I know that.
For sure. But that also makes women happy, right?
I find women want breast augmentation more than men.
I feel more comfortable when a woman comes to me and tells me she wants it than she tells me that her boyfriend wants it. To have it. That always makes me more uncomfortable, because I don't really
because you don't know what the female's mindset's really going to be.
Yeah,
is she getting it for the right reason?
Right. Yeah. You got to be looking. You got to be looking for that stuff. But actually, I have a story about a psychiatrist and a plastic surgeon along that realm.
Sounds like a beginning of a joke.
Exactly. My husband and I were talking, and he had a friend who was a psychiatrist who had a patient who had been working with this woman for quite some time, and she was very insecure and had been working with the psychiatrist for a long time, and had heard that Peter's wife was a plastic surgeon, and said, listen, as an aside, this patient of mine wants to have a breast augmentation, and can she go to your wife? And so she came, and I did a breast augmentation, and the psychiatrist called me a few weeks later, and she said, I hate you. And I said, why? And she said, because I've been working with this woman for like 2.5 years, and I have gotten nowhere. And in an hour and a half, you changed her whole life.
But she won't even go to him anymore. That's it. I'm fine, doc.
You also do reductions, I'm assuming, too, right?
I do a lot more reductions, actually.
Which I think is a slap in the face to God. I'm sorry to tell you. It's like God gave you this gift, and you just... But I understand.
I will tell you, the breast reduction patients I have are the happiest patients.
Because they don't have back problems.
It's tough on the lower back if they're that big, right?
Yeah.
Like he's got to get...
I've never had that problem.
He's got to get a headectomy carrying around that melon on top of his shoulders.
No, it's because
it's hurting his back.
It's because my brain is so big.
It's a swollen head.
If you do a breast reduction, right? It's really fat that's in there. Is that correct?
And gland, which looks like fat.
What do you do with that after it?
Make soap.
Do you put it into the next patient? Hey, listen, I just took
recycle.
I get a lot of requests for that.
Yeah.
Could you just take it out of my friend because she doesn't need it?
That's
and
where I was
give it
going.
to me, please. No, you can't do that.
No.
It goes to the pathology lab, and they do look at it actually, which is kind of a waste of time because they don't often find anything. No. But it does any body tissue removed from a human, you have to send to pathology, and they will look at it to make sure there's nothing. No breast cancer, no nothing bad.
And it's got to be held for a certain time, correct?
We weigh it, and then it goes on a slide, and then they dispose of it. They burn it.
I read a story a long time ago. I can't remember where I read it. If they remove something off of your body, there's a time frame that it's got to sit before it gets disposed of.
I don't even know what the time is. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I didn't even know.
Once it goes to pathology, you don't care anymore.
I get a report, and that's what I know.
How long does it take to get the report back? So maybe that's how long it takes.
Takes a week.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, there are so many different types of plastic surgeon specialties. There's
right.
rhinoplasty. There's Botox specialists. and Botox seems to be the big one now.
Right. Well, it's very common. I mean, not all plastic surgeons. No, take it back. All plastic surgeons can do Botox, but not everybody who does Botox is a plastic surgeon.
Yeah, nurse practitioners can do it, correct?
Dermatologists, gastroenterologists.
Gastroenterologists.
Yeah, there's lots of people who do Botox who didn't train as plastic surgeons.
Because that seems to be the big thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
just
Not going to go there with that one.
I'm 48. I'm good. I'm good. This.
But what I was going to say when we were talking about the breast reduction is that, that's one side of my practice, the side where people want something and I give them what they want. And for whatever their motivation is, I change their life, I make them happy, I make them feel better, whatever it is. And then there's the other side of my practice, which, started off my practice probably about 75% of my active practice was breast cancer and breast cancer reconstruction. And now I'm so busy with everything, it's about 50-50. But
So you had people, two parts of it. You had people that needed it.
yeah.
People that wanted it.
Right.
The people that wanted it want the breast augmentation or the
Right.
breast implants and everything. Then you
Right.
go with the cancer patients who are people who need it.
And doing the stuff that's wanted is fun and it can make people feel really, really happy, and you can, as a plastic surgeon, it can make you feel really good about yourself. But my passion is for helping people in the way that I help them when I do breast cancer reconstruction, and that's a whole different thing.
It's the choice that
Yeah.
gets me. So women have the choice of having this option. If there was some sort of augmentation for men, this is the imbalance. It would be in the Constitution as an amendment, as a God-given right that the government would pay for. And I'm dead serious with that one.
No, you're right.
It would be a right more than
Absolutely.
anything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
I like that.
Oh yeah, all day long. But you now there's a new trend that obviously came out with Angelina Jolie. She had both her breasts removed as a preventative measure.